What if everything we've been told about getting back to the moon is already wrong? Not because NASA or SpaceX are hiding anything, but because the simplest, fastest, most obvious path has been staring us in the face this entire time, and almost nobody is talking about it: an expendable starship. Yes, expendable. The one word Elon Musk almost never says out loud. But stick with me for the next 10 minutes, and I'll show you why throwing away the most powerful upper stage ever built might actually be the smartest move. SpaceX could make at least for the first few trips to the lunar surface. By the end, you'll know exactly why the current reusable refueling and orbit plan is way more fragile than it looks. How a stripped down, no heat shield, no flap Starship could cut years off the timeline, and why deep down, even the most hardcore reusability fans have to admit, sometimes the fastest way forward is to let something burn up on purpose. Let's start with the nightmare every rocket engineer loses sleep over: re-entry. Picture this: a 50-meter-tall stainless steel skyscraper screaming back through the atmosphere at 17,000 miles an hour, 12 times faster than a bullet. The energy isn't just big, it squares with speed. Double the velocity and you don't get twice the heat. You get 4 times! Push it a little harder and the air in front of the ship compresses so violently that it turns into glowing white plasma hotter than the surface of the sun. That's what Starship has to survive every single time it wants to come home. To live through that inferno, you need thousands of fragile ceramic tiles, 4 aerodynamic flaps, header tanks full of landing propellant, extra sensors, miles of extra plumbing, and millions of lines of software just to keep everything pointed the right way. All of that is dead weight on the way up. All of it costs performance, money, and most importantly, time. Now imagine you just don't come home. Delete the tiles. Delete the flaps. Delete the header tanks. Delete half the sensors and most of the software. Suddenly, the same rocket that barely claws its way to orbit with 150 tons in reusable mode can hurl 250 tons all the way to low Earth orbit and simply let the upper stage burn up over the Pacific when the job is done. 250 tons. Skylab weighed 76 tons. A single expendable Starship could loft 3 Skylabs in one launch. The entire ISS is about 420 tons, 2 launches done. That kind of performance is obscene. And because you're not reserving fuel for a suicide burn and landing, every drop of propellant is dedicated to one thing: going faster, higher, or carrying more. Now, I know what you're thinking, but reusability is the entire point. Throwing away Starships is sacrilege. Hold that thought. Because for the specific problem of landing humans on the moon before 2030, expendable uppers might be the cheat code we've all been ignoring. Think about the current Artemis plan. The bottleneck isn't the booster. Super Heavy is already catching itself like it's no big deal. The real choke point is orbital refueling. One fully loaded lunar Starship needs something like 1,200 tons of extra propellant in orbit. That means 10 to 20 tanker flights, each one docking perfectly with either the lander itself or a depot transferring cryogenic fluids that have never been transferred in microgravity in human history, all while the methane and oxygen slowly boil off and the clock ticks. Every extra docking is another chance for a valve to stick, for ice to clog a line, for 2 spacecraft drifting at inches per second to crunch a docking port worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Do that 20 times in a row with perfect success, and then, only then, can your crewed lander finally light its engines for the moon. That's an insane amount of serial risk. But if the tanker upper stages are expendable, everything changes. You don't need to land them. You don't need to relight engines in flight. You don't need to nurse them gently through re-entry. You just fill them to the brim, launch them, dock once, pump fast, and let the empty hull tumble away and burn. The booster comes home every time, still fully reusable, still carrying the priceless Raptor engines. But the upper stage becomes a cheap aluminum lithium fuel drum with engines on the bottom. Suddenly, those 15 to 20 refueling flights aren't a terrifying gauntlet of perfection. They're just another Tuesday at Starbase. And because each expendable ship is lighter and simpler, you might only need 8 or 10 instead of 20. Maybe fewer if you slap on a couple of drop tanks. Those elegant little cheats from the 1950s where you bolt extra fuel on the outside. Burn it first, and kick it away the moment it's empty. Yes, there are downsides. It's less elegant. It costs more per flight than full reuse. And it feels like stepping backward after SpaceX spent a decade proving the universe doesn't have to work that way. But elegance is not the goal right now. Boots on the moon before China plants a flag and calls the South Pole home for the next 100 years. That's the goal. And here is the dirty little secret nobody wants to say out loud. Almost nobody else on Earth actually needs 250 tons to orbit. Falcon Heavy barely flies because customers would rather launch 2 normal rockets than figure out how to build one gigantic payload. When full reusability drops the price to a few $1,000,000 a flight, the smart money will be on 10 smaller satellites instead of one monster telescope. Expendable Starship will almost certainly remain a niche, maybe a handful of insane science missions, maybe a couple of national security leviathans that have to go up in one piece. But for the first 3, 4, maybe 5 lunar landings, it could be the difference between landing in 2028 and slipping to 2032. Sometimes, the shortest path between 2 points isn't a perfect reusable loop. Sometimes it's a blazing one-way arrow. And if that arrow gets the first human footstep on another world in 57 years, I think we'll all agree it was worth letting a few steel giants die so the dream could live. So the next time someone tells you full reusability is the only way, just smile. Because deep inside the hangars at Starbase, there's probably already a ship with no tiles, no flaps, and no plans of ever coming home. And one day soon, it might just carry the first lunar sunrise in a generation.